I believe your favorite song from Buffy the Vampire Slayer the musical is "Let It Burn." That's what's gonna happen to your food because you're gonna be here for the whole time. Welcome everybody to another episode of Locked and Loaded, where we keep it locked and loaded with information for you guys. As always, is a person that's gonna be burning his food very soon, Javen. He's gonna try to leave in 20 minutes to go take food out, turn it around, and put it back in the oven. Is that what you're doing? Is that what you said?
I'm uncovering it, putting it back in the oven for 10 minutes, and then I got to run again and go take it out.
Okay. So 20 minutes from right now. Okay.
Yes.
And then another 10 minutes after that. Then the show will be over. Okay, yeah, that worked.
Yep. So as we're ending the show, I'll be running to go take it out of the oven so it doesn't
It's gonna
burn.
burn. We're gonna find out next episode. Will you see him come back on next episode with gloves on from the wounds? What
Oh
happened?
my god.
Um so we ended the show with you wanting to talk about something in particular about the shows that you know what? I'm gonna let you explain it. Go ahead.
Well, I went back into the past. I told you guys for a minute, and I've been watching all of these old movies. Some are good, some are bad, but it's really cool to see some of the biggest stars right now 10 years ago starting their first movie. And that's one of the most incredible things to go back and see because I never knew, me being out of the movie game for so long, some of these characters that are in some of the big movies that I do go and see, I don't know where they come from. I'm like, this is an incredible actor. Where did they come from? And then I go back 10 years ago to see that movie that I never saw and always wanted to see, and that was their first movie. And that's one of the greatest things to see. So, what I wanted to talk about was the year that I stopped watching a lot of movies, was 2013. That also happened to be the year that Twilight and Harry Potter were dying off. They were looking for the next big teen novel series. And if you ask me, I don't think anything has taken their place since then. I don't think they found anything that was die hardcore series for teens that
Hunger
you could.
Games? Was
The
that
Hunger
before or
Games
after
was
that?
Hunger Games was in the middle of there. So
Okay,
2013 was when Catching Fire came out, but Catching Fire was the biggest release of the Hunger Games series. So even it died out after that year.
got it.
So it's just, to this day there has not been, and I was talking to someone about it and I realized that, um there has, because even when I look at the other movies like Divergent, that Divergent has had the biggest standing of being able to make all of its movies, where everything else is kind of like falling short or being cut short, like the Percy Jackson series, Mortal Instrument series, Beautiful Creatures, these movie series. And I was asking myself why, and one day I woke up and I realized Twilight and Harry Potter were movie big when they were just books. And I keep forgetting that those started as a book craze before anything else. Now, me being the manager of a bookstore back then, I knew about Beautiful Creatures. I knew how popular Mortal Instrument was, but they weren't mainstream popular.
Mm,
And so the mainstream of people didn't know anything about them until the movie finally came out. But when that first Harry Potter movie came out, the seats were packed because they had already read the books. And so I wanted to know, what is number I have two questions for you. Number one, what big teen movie didn't make it as a series that you wished could have?
like I said in the conversation we had before, I really enjoyed Mortal Instrument, but I think I definitely want to see it again. But looking at it when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a one off. And I even think that they probably, if I had to compare it to a book, like if I had read the book, I probably would have been disappointed in the movie because they probably put way too much in there from probably more than one book.
Yeah,
The, because they knew it was going to probably end up being a one off. So,
exactly.
and I think that's how a lot of those were. It's you asked the question, I answered it, but it's just like a little bit of a piggyback in what you were saying. I really think you hit home with the fact that all of those had a cult following before a movie came out. And the movie was like because of how great the book was. But the other ones that came out didn't have the same kind of following. They had a following, but didn't quite do it. Because even if you say those cult following books that would I've loved to see more movies of, in the back of my mind, I still think they need to do the Dresden Files. It's I think it was done improper for the TV series. I love the actor that played him, but I don't think it was the right way to do that series because you can completely tell they turned that from the book that was incredible to that little Hollywood thing where you're in the meeting like, does it have to be a skull? Can it just be someone he talks to? That way we have someone there because otherwise he's just talking to a skull and who wants to see that for a whole half hour during a TV show? Because he talks to the skull a lot in the very beginning of the series and they have these
Hmm.
long conversations. But how do you make that work? You know what? He can come out of that skull and we'll see a person and that's going to be what's going to be. So that's going to make it. But then to change the car, so he's not driving this beat up car that he has, instead he has something else. It's just, and then the way they do this, it's just, you see all of that. They make these nuanced changes to try and make it work. And it either does or it doesn't.
Hmm.
What's really working right now, because I'm on episode, I think, 4, is The Last of Us. That is by far the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they
Yes.
made serious changes to it, and it works.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares because the changes they made were Emmy award winning changes. Like, you're just like, every change that you've made might just win you an Emmy. And it's not because it's different, it's because you changed it and you did it in such an artistic way
Yes, it
that
had nothing to do with, well, we've got to change it because, how's he going to do blah, blah, blah for this a period of time unless we do this? It's like, it wasn't done because of that. It was like they took everybody that's usually in that room that has nothing to do, that's never made a movie in their life, making suggestions of how a TV show or movie should be, but don't know how to do it, but telling someone how they should. They got all of them out of the room and they just made a show, but they made a show completely work with a video game. They took the best parts of the video game and kept the core.
Mhm.
But then after keeping that core, they said, let's branch this out because let's be real. In a video game, you can do all these things and be as creative as you want to. But if you're in a TV show and you're under a time constraint, they can only go through one path. In Last of Us, you had several paths you can go down. You ultimately ended up into a cutscene, which was an awesome cutscene. But how you got there was your choice. In Last of Us, they don't have that opportunity. They have to cut all that part short and get to the main story. And the way they got to the main story with each character that they've done so far is
Oh.
better than the last character. And you get a quick background story of why someone's going through what they're going through. And then you're like, that makes sense. Okay, now I understand. But the biggest issue is you fall in love with each character, but you know what's going to happen to each character, and it's just a matter of time. But to go back to what you're saying, Dresden Files, I
We can't we
never
can't
this
leave
out.
that subject so soon, Joe.
We can't. We'll have to make it another episode because you
Oh,
gotta pick up food so you don't
I
burn
do
it.
gotta pick up
But
food.
I want to make sure that we stick to the target because
Understood.
yeah, you know us. We'll just go completely off
And you
subject.
even
But
answered that was going to be my second question. Was there a book series that they haven't really had a chance to attack that you really want Hollywood to attack in the right way?
I feel like if I had all the money in the world, and this is just being me, I don't care what anyone else says.
Yeah.
I think I would get in contact with Neil Patrick Harris and tell him it's time for him to do the Dresden Files, and then I'll get in contact with Henry Cavill and I'll say he should be the Christian in the Dresden Files.
Ooh. Ooh, that's a good one.
And there is this
That is a good
amazing
one.
Spanish woman that did the what is that? Selena series. There's a Selena series, and there's this woman that played the drummer, Selena's sister, and she would be the best. Oh man, I can't believe I can't think of her name right now in the Dresden book series, but I was gonna say Mahoney. It wasn't Mahoney.
I
The
never
woman.
watched that series.
Well, the in the books he has there's a police officer that he works with, a female police officer, and
Yes.
she is the embodiment of her. So it would be
Really?
Neil Patrick Harris playing Dresden because you need him to be a little bit beat up, but Neil Patrick Harris actually knows magic. And him when I see Neil Patrick Harris act like he's a jerk, even though he's not, when he like played like he is, there's
Yeah.
something about his quirky jerkiness that's just like that actually can work for Dresden because of how it is, and he can actually do that. It's just yeah, oh my gosh, it's the person that played RoboCop to play Dresden Files, Dresden's father. Oh my gosh, yeah.
You've already got
I
the
have
casting
every person, I have
down.
the whole cast down to a T, and it's like
Mm,
it's in your head because the problem is everyone's like, is it James Marsden that does the audio for the books? The dude from Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
yeah.
he does the voice, and everyone's like, he should do it. He should do it. If they do a series, it should be him. And I disagree, and I can't figure it out. But I feel like he should be somebody else in there.
Yeah.
I kind of have idea who it was, but I'm not gonna say who it is. But I truly
Gotcha.
feel it's time for the Dresden Files to come and take over. But what I don't want it to be in the movie theaters. I want it to be on Netflix.
Yeah. I
I want
mean,
it to be a
shoot.
Netflix series that
I want HBO Max now. Like HBO Max has been absolutely killing it for me. And I know you brought up The Last of Us, but I also have to bring up House of Dragon. If you to the Game of Thrones franchise fans out there, I was not a huge Game of Thrones person. So there was no way I was going to like this show that was a prequel to Game of Thrones that takes place 200 years before and shows you why Game of Thrones is the way that it is and why those kingdoms were never supposed to be what they are now. And so I went into it blind because I was just like, okay, well, I didn't really, get deep into Game of Thrones. I only got to like season 4 or 5. And so I was just like, let me go into House of Dragons. I was like, maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. And I don't know, there was something about taking the story that is super chaotic because it centers around tons of different families and then centering it on one family. I was glued to my seat. I was literally at the point where the second an episode went off, I'm sitting here like scratching at the neck like I'm an addict waiting for the next episode to hit again for a whole nother week. That's how good House of Dragons was.
I haven't
A-
watched it yet.
Incredible story.
Better
Absolutely.
than Last of Us?
You said what?
Is it better than Last of Us?
It's on par with it. That's my thing is I'm honestly upset because when Emmys come around, these two shows better be mentioned. And if they are both up for the same awards, I don't know who should win.
Last
Uh that is, that is what I
was a
said.
video game, and it finally puts the video games on the top of the map for the first time ever. It should just
That
be Last of
I,
Us.
I know and I 100% agree with that, but when you see the storyline of House of Dragons, and also to know that Doctor Who is in there and he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff to know that
Which
which oh my gosh,
like you can't just say Doctor Who. That's
I know
40 different people.
Matt Smith. Matt Smith plays Damon in House of Dragons, and Damon is a demon. That's what they call him, Damon the Demon. And on the chat sites, they call him Damon the Demon. But he's literally um, he's such a different character. He is killing. He's having sex. He's doing all this other type of stuff that he would never do as the Doctor. And you by episode 2 or 3, you're like, oh, you don't even reference him as the Doctor anymore. You're just like, this is a completely different character. I'm so happy he's getting a chance to play it. um and it's just the buildup of House of Dragons. It really is a buildup because you know what's coming. You know that in order for it to get to Game of Thrones, this kingdom has to break in some way. So you're watching it as it is in the land of peace, and you're literally watching little pieces come out here and there to where you know this break is going to happen. And I think that's just as incredible as the characters, as the story, is the fact that they string you along because they know you're waiting for this break to happen. And the way that they do it is just so clever.
Are they
So good.
stringing you along properly?
Properly.
Because they're not
One
going to make it like last way too long than it should.
Nope. And that was my biggest thing, is the fact that on top of everything else, you are thinking that the break is going to come from certain areas, and it ends up coming from somewhere completely different. And that's what I love about a show, is when I can't predict it, is when they make decisions where you're just like, oh, well, obviously he's going to do this. And then he does something completely different because it is Game of Thrones. You're just like, they're going to kill him right then and there, and then they forgive him. And you're just like, wait, this is Game of Thrones. So now you know that the craziness that you were expecting to come out of this event has to come from somewhere else. So now it's got your mind racing. And that's what I love about a show. And that's what makes it clever, is that you truthfully can't predict some of the decisions that are being made here.
Mm.
So yeah, that's my plea to go watch House of Dragons. Like I said before, these are the two main shows I want to end up at the Emmys. I don't care about nothing else this season, this year, past year. For me, I knew House of Dragons was coming, and that's why I loved it so much. But I never knew Last of Us was coming, and I never knew it was going to be as spectacular as it was. So it was just this hidden gem that just blew up. And that's why I fully believe that The Last of Us also deserves the win at the Emmys, is because nobody expected this. Nobody expected Emmy award winning acting. Nobody expected them to get the storyline right. Nobody expected to enjoy it as much as they are. People didn't even enjoy the second game as much as they are enjoying this show. But it has it has made um the game sales go up. The game sales has skyrocketed for Last of Us, just from people watching the show and wanting to play out the full storyline.
I
So
have played the first Last of Us, I think. I can't tell if it's 4 or maybe 5 times. Every time like it came out first, I think on PlayStation 3, and then they re-released it for PlayStation 4 and I played it again. And then they re-released it in a little bit for PlayStation 5 and I believe I played it again. But then they just did a new release of it where they put in the graphics they had for part 2 into the part 1. So you have that kind of graphics on a PlayStation 5 and they redid a little bit of the mechanics of it to make it easier to control the game. And I played that again. And then I am one of the few people who loved the second one. And I could not figure out why I loved it because in the very beginning, we see what happens to Joel. And is it a spoiler alert if I share any of that or no? Or
wait, which what
Last
happens?
of Us 2.
Last of Us 2? I've never played Last of Us 2, so
Did
I
you play
have
the
no.
first one and beat it?
Yeah, I played the first one and beat it.
Okay. Um, I would say Last of Us 2 is better than Last of Us 1 when it comes to messing with your spirit. The game style of the game is better because the mechanics they've gotten it down, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what you have to do in 2 is so gut wrenching they pull at you to where people have literally picking up their controller and throwing it on the ground saying, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not. And the interesting part, there's one particular scene in the game where the game doesn't move forward until you do it. You have to do it. You don't have a choice in order to go further in the game. And some games, like you can choose to do it, but if you sit there and just hold the controller and don't do anything, it'll just like go to something else and it continue on. A lot of games, it's done in Call of Duty. I've seen them do it in a lot of games. So that way you have a choice. This game, you don't have a choice. You have to do this thing. And because you have to do it, you have to become fully vested when you do. That's amazing. I'm going to pause it right here so you can sit there and do your food thing real quick because it's 20 minutes. And I'll
I
just
act
audience so you get back.
While we were talking, I realized that that timestamp is 10 minutes away, so we can finish our show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but it changes what a video game is supposed to do in a video game. This is why, in my opinion, I knew Last of Us as a TV series, if they ever did it, was going to work. And I knew they were going to have to change some things because Last of Us 2 completely showed everybody for the first time ever how important we are to the storyline, not the characters that we're playing.
Mm.
And for the first time ever, it chose us over the characters. And no one realized that it was doing that to us. And because we didn't realize it was doing it to us in that way, we got upset for the wrong reasons. Because a video game is supposed to be a certain way, guaranteed, end of story. You don't change this dynamic of a video game. And Last of Us 2, they said, we're going to go ahead and change it. We're gonna sit there and do something we've never done that no one's ever done in a video game before. We're gonna make you the important character of this story because you are fully vested, and we don't want you to be. We want you to be invested with the world, not the characters,
Mm.
because the characters are a small part of this living world that we created, and you are only getting a taste of what's to come because they can make so many games off of this place because it's real. You saw
Yeah.
the Last of Us TV series, right? All
Yeah.
the episodes. Just the fact of how it first started with a conversation from the 50s and how in that conversation that person was saying that this is how this evolution would happen. And the person said, well, that can never happen. It was like, why can't it? And it literally, it to the point where people were like, the host goes, we need to take a commercial break because
Yes.
he proved a point so well. And then you fast forward to them taking that woman to the hospital.
My favorite
And
scene,
I'm
my
like, what is
favorite doggone
happening here?
scene in the entire show is her having that conversation with them.
And I mean, it was clear as day when she just says the word bomb. And just like, it set the tone of, for the first time ever, what's about to happen and what they could possibly do. And then the scene where we lose, not lose, but when we see with what happens with Joel and his girlfriend in this series and what she has to do and how she goes through her storyline, it's not the same. It's the same, but not the same in this version. And I loved how they did the portrayal in this version of the show because in a video game, you can't put that much effort in because you are not that player. See, there are rules to a video game that's never really discussed, but it's always
Mhm.
there. The
Yeah.
main character is always the most important character. So there are certain things that happen to the main character, and it's about the main character, and we're invested in the main character that allows it to grow. But what people needed to realize is that The Last of Us Part 1, Joel was never the main character. He was just the character we were playing. Ellie
Mm.
was the main character.
Yes.
And we got a taste of Ellie for Last of Us Part 1 of being able to play her. And then we got a little bit more with their extended game that they created,
The DLC.
the DLC. But then we get a trueness in Part 2. But then they trick us in Part 2 and making us think who the main character is in that game. And like I'm telling you, because I can't share anything about that game, I feel the main character in part two was us.
Mm,
But we can't play us because we're out here,
yeah.
but we're seeing the world. So we need someone that we can play with in this world to figure things out because not everything is black and white. And we want it in a video game to be complete. Is that the monster? Okay, let me kill that monster. Monster's dead, mission's accomplished. That's what a video game is. Point and click, shoot, kill it, die, move on, no matter what it is. Then you flip that thing around and you say, okay, who really is the bad guy? And then if you ask that question, it is hard to play Last of Us 2 because you are doing something you've never done before. And that's what makes it so great. It wasn't ready for us to handle it, but I guarantee you, any person that played it, beat it, you've got to play the first one all over again, play it and beat it, then play the second one again, and then everything makes sense. I've never seen a video game that's done that. I played Last of Us 1, like I said, I think 4 or 5 times. I played Last of Us 2 2 times. After playing it the second time, I feel it's a much better game than the first one, and I feel the storyline is much, much better because that one is revenge on another level. The first one was just survive. First one was
Mm,
survive. Second one is I'm already vested in this world. I know what I can do. I know what I can't do, and I'm gonna cause some hell in this world. First one was can I just survive and make it through, and the TV show gives you a taste of part two in every single episode of The Last of Us Part
man.
One. And I love that they do that because they know where they're going with this. You're getting the past, a few minutes of the past, because every episode is at least 40 minutes, but a lot of them have exceeded over an hour. And
Yeah.
the episode with what is that guy's name in real life? I'm so horrible with names. The episode with the guy that was by himself.
Bill and Frank,
Yes, Bill and Frank.
the dude from The Office,
Dude from no,
Parks and
Parks and
Recreation.
Recs. Yeah,
Yeah.
he. Oh my gosh, he needs an Oscar. I know it's not Oscar, but he just needs an Oscar for
He
that.
needs an Oscar. Like that shit. It felt like a movie. It felt
Um,
like a doggone movie. He needs an award for that.
they outdid themselves, and what's interesting is that whole episode, um, they it wasn't just them. Like it was the whole episode wasn't them. You would think the episode started with them and ended with them, but it didn't. They were
No.
just they were the meat of a delicious sandwich of the
Yep.
situation, and my gosh, it's just that is still flowing in my mind. And then I think that how are they gonna top that in the very next episode? It was like it makes you almost forget what happened in the episode before that. And then I'm on the episode after that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just they are just outdoing themselves over and over again, and they are killing it in such a great way. But I think we are finally getting a taste of what this world needs when it comes to video games. So to answer your question, which I know we kind of went way off, is
That's
you get
fine.
the machine movie is something I think that I would have loved to see more of, but I understand why it did what it did. 'Cause the world wasn't ready for that, and more importantly, no one understood everything that was going on in that movie. It was a great movie, but you have to be someone like us to let a lot of things slide. And that's what happens in a lot of these when they decide to do these movies and create something from a book. You have to be willing to invest yourself in it in a different way and be okay with it. These other movies that were the Twilight series, the Harry Potter series, even though they didn't put everything in there, it didn't matter because they had the fan base. When you already have several millions of people willing to see something, and each one of them decides to see a movie, but back then people were watching the movies like 5 times. They'll keep going back to the movie theater and see it. So you got
Exactly.
5 million people, and they each one of them watch it 5 times. You've made 5 million if it was a dollar, but those movies
Exactly.
weren't a dollar. They were like $10 to $13 per person, so you're cleaning house with just the fan base. But what those fan bases did was they brought in other people. I never read those books. I never saw it, but you were a fan of it and you were like, I gotta watch it. So I take the time to watch it. And then boom, now I'm watching it. and then the
Exactly.
same thing with the other series. So, I
Keep
think that's
talking. I'll be right
awesome.
back.
No, we're ending the show now.
Oh,
Thank
we're
you,
gonna end
everybody, for everything.
it.
We'll catch you next week. James got to do some things to do, and so do I. But as always, keep it locked and loaded with information. I'm Joseph. That is Javis. He's got to go save his burnt food. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.